bringing you another live and informative edition of the best Sunday morning show. Good morning and welcome. It's 900 hours Central African time, and you know that is the time to get you thinking and out of bed. I'm Alicia Jali, and trust me, today is going to be quite an exciting one. We'll be talking about the EFF Gupta journalist debacle. We'll also get in depth on the Nkandla settlement issues as well as the racism issues in our country. But first, the top stories of the day. The SA National Defence Force has warned against a scam defrauding young people with false offers of integration into the armed forces. Spokesperson Xolani Mabanga says the SANDF became aware of the allegations that groups of individuals calling themselves Amabutho and the SA Cape Coloured Corps are soliciting money from young and unemployed youths, promising them integration into the South African National Defence Force. ANC Secretary-General Gwede Mantashe has reiterated the importance of land distribution. He was speaking in Bloemfontein during the Free State celebrations to mark the 104th anniversary of the ANC. Now, this comes as discussions grow over the expropriation bill, which passed through Parliament's Public Works Committee during the past week. Mantashe says the land issue is a vital one that cannot be ignored. The new Gauteng MEC for Human Settlements and Local Government, Paul Mashatile, says his main focus will be to improve the lives of those in informal settlements and to accelerate development in the province. With local government elections around the corner, the ANC has indicated that it wouldn't want to lose any of the municipalities in Gauteng to the opposition. ANC Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa says government is determined to prove wrong the World Bank revised projections for South Africa's GDP growth this year. In a recent report, the World Bank projected that South Africa's economy is to decline below 1% this year. The death toll in the Taiwanese earthquake has risen to 18 now. The 6.4 magnitude earthquake hit the south of the country yesterday morning. Rescue workers are continuing their search for survivors who may still be trapped under the rubble of an apartment building where most of the victims lost their lives. All right, let's now have a look at some of the front pages of our Sunday newspapers. That's the Sunday Time leading with the story about President Zuma's recent decision to pay back some of the Nkandla costs. City Press leads with the headline that highlights challenges facing President Zuma ahead of the State of the Nation address. The Sunday Independent there leads with the mine disaster in Mpumalanga. And the Weekend Argus leads with a story about a drafted transformation policy document which has created divisions with advocates in the Western Cape. And last but not least, the Sunday Tribune there leads with a headline about 3 SA men who went missing on the Katara-Maran Sunrail last year. Distressed families are calling for an inquiry into the accident. All right, now I'm very honored to kick off the show with Mr. Silo Hatang, the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, as well as Professor Stephen Friedman, a very respected political analyst, and we will be discussing what we as society can do to try and create awareness around racism. Gentlemen, a very good morning to both of you. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right, let's kick off our show now. The recent public racial statements on social media and the outcry that came along with which indicates South Africa has not yet healed the wounds of the segregated past. The Nelson Mandela and the Ahmed Kathrada Foundations are facilitating Anti-Racism Week that aims to globalize the fight against racism. So let's start with you. Tell us about this Anti-Racism Week. How is it going to work out?
Well, the Nelson Mandela Foundation and the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation established or helped establish the Anti-Racism Network of South Africa. And through the network, we're hoping to bring together, thus far we have 80 organizations, but we're hoping that all organizations that have something to do with discrimination, particularly and specifically racism, would pull together their efforts and say, what can we do to change this? And one of the initiatives by the Anti-Racism Network of South Africa will be the Anti-Racism Week, which starts on the 14th of March and ends on the 21st on Human Rights Day. And during that week, we will have different activations around the country, starting with an initiative we'll be doing with the South African Human Rights Commission, a 2-day conference looking at racism in South Africa. But one of the things that we are hoping to do is not to have just talk shops, that these things will bring out some tangible solutions to say what kind of, or proposals, what can we do to change where we are as South Africans.
What kind of solutions are those, Silo? Let's be specific.
Some of the things that we're saying is for as long as we keep tiptoeing around racism, that we don't name it for what it is. Conversations at home, the dinner table discussions that we have, and name it for what it is. So whether it be subtle racism, where black people today still go through a thing where you are on a queue and people feel that they shouldn't be standing on a queue if it's too long. And it takes me back to 1990 when I went to apply for my ID. And I stood there with my mother, and there white people would just go through. And every time it happens, it boils, it has your blood boiling because it takes you back. And it with my name, you know, it starts with a name that Home Affairs wouldn't just get my name right. I had to go 5 times to apply for my ID. And every time I tell a white South African to say, please, this is how you say my name, this is how you spell it. And it doesn't happen like that. That's the subtlety of racism that you then feel, that it takes you back to 1990, 1991, when you went 5 times to just change your ID. So those are small things, but then also the issue of privilege that all of us keep talking about, where racism at its worst has this thing of having black people still having this economic deprivation that's there. And we're saying, let's name these things for what they are and then try and find solutions for them.
Prof, what is your views on this?
No, I think this is a very important initiative because, you know, we made a very great mistake as a society, I believe, in 1994. And the mistake we made was to believe that simply because we had a constitution that said that everybody was equal, that everybody really was equal. And sadly, it doesn't work like that. The real problem about racism in this country is not that people can't get on with each other. It is that, as Silo says, some people have privileges which others don't. Some people dominate other people because of their race. The same groups who were dominating the economy and many other parts of our society in 1994 are still dominating. So what we should have done in 1994 is confront that head on, is to say this has to change, and to start a conversation as South Africans about how we can change it in a way which enables us to build a fairer society. And if this initiative, which he's talking about, starts to bring that conversation about, then hopefully it gets us on track to talk about what we should have been talking about 20 years ago.
Look, Prof, speaking of education, then let's talk about ways now where we can educate and engage our people about racism.
You know, we're going to be hosting different dialogues. One will be on blackness, because I've been on record saying that white supremacy thrives partly because of black inferiority. So when you don't confront situations where you feel that this actually is racist, you then let it thrive. And one of the things that is so oppressing for me personally is how you'd find that every time a white person does something, you have this split second. And if you speak to most black people, they will tell you they go through this. That every time you go through this thing, you have this split second. Are they being racist or just uncouth? And based on what decisions you come to, you then confront the situation accordingly. You have a thing where...
we react differently to certain things, certainly, Silo.
Precisely, but the response should be that it shouldn't happen again. You see, the fact that you can have someone do this thing over and over tells you that there's a problem. They don't see it as a problem. And that's where the problem lies. And I think if answer is to give any kind of platforms. It's for black people to feel that they can also express themselves against racism. But for white people who say it's wrong, to also come out in publicly and say it's wrong. Minister Natim Teto during the launch said, our racism is a unique blend of racism because there's racism without racists. No white South African in South Africa is racist, but there is racism.
Yeah, well, you see, the reason for that is that what happened in 1994 is quite rightly people were ashamed publicly to identify with the racism which had happened. But you see, the problem is that the racism doesn't go away because the people who believe that whites are superior still believe that whites are superior, but they have to find new ways of expressing that and new languages. And that black suspicion that Sello is talking about, I think is very reasonable because black people, when they are subject to behavior which makes them feel inferior, are quite entitled to say, is this person doing that because they're just a rude person? Or are they doing that because they still believe, as most white people have believed in this country, that they're superior to black people? And unless we confront that issue, then we're not going to deal with the issue. The penny sparrows of this world are a symptom of a far deeper problem in us.
Look, gentlemen, there's been that call, of course, that widespread call to criminalize racism. And I know that Minister Mthethwa, he was there, Sello, when you launched the campaign, and he said that route is going to take quite a long time because it's still a grey area as to how you can define racism between people. It's still going to be a long road.
Well, for us, we believe that criminalizing racism is one thing that, even if you tried, the fact that we haven't for 21 years done something that Madiba said, Madiba said that reconciliation, just as issues such as racism, cannot just be dealt with legally. That it's actually about changing hearts.
Absolutely.
And until such time that we have the young man, there's a young man who was holding a placard during the Feast Must Fall movement, which most of us remember it, just saying, don't tell my mom, but I think she's racist. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes,
and until such time that young man can say it at home to say, I think this is racism. So we change it from home because our reaction in our homes to anything black tells the young people in our houses that that's how you should react to black people. So I think that's what we. If you go the criminalizing route. I'm not so convinced that that's the way we should only be going because at the moment we've got equality courts. Are they being used effectively? The Human Rights Commission, is it being used effectively for us to deal with racism? And I think that's what we should be putting our energies into, to say those systems that we've put in place as a constitutional country, what have we done to make them effective?
Thank you so much, Sello, and good luck with that campaign. Of course, we will be getting more information on that. And of course, I can go to the Nelson Mandela Foundation website to get more information there.
Also answer.org.
All right. Well, there you have it. That was Mr. Sello Hadang. He is the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. And of course, we was talking us through some of the ways that we will be, or they will be looking at as a foundation to try and promote a unified South Africa. We're going to take a quick ad break, and coming up after the break, more stories that grip the news headlines this week. Do stay with us.
Africa's tech scene is constantly coming up with innovative ways to answer some of the continent's problems.
We source content from social media, from our mobile apps, from our website.
And as people move from phone calls to data, companies have to switch what they offer.
People expect to get higher speeds, better quality broadband for less.
On Network, we have information on Africa's technology and social media scene. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 9 p.m. Central African Time, only on SABC News.
All right, you're still with Media Monitor. Welcome back. Your views are highly appreciated on our Twitter page at SA Media Monitor. Now, suspended National Police Commissioner Ria Pierre says she has full confidence in the justice system, adding that she will be vindicated. She was reacting to recommendations by the police watchdog body that she, together with other SAPS senior officials, be criminally charged for their role in the Marikana tragedy. All right, Professor, this has been an ongoing issue. The charges have been stacked against Ria now. 3 charges. Take us through those charges, and do you think they will stick?
Well, I don't want to comment on whether they will stick because, you can't, we have courts in this country for a reason. The courts decide whether they'll stick or not. Look, the charge is obviously that she was personally responsible, that she committed certain actions. If you look at the Farlam Commission report, what they said there about things that she said at meetings, that deliberately created a situation in which people were shot. As I say, I don't know whether that whether the courts will agree with that or not. What I think is odd about this situation is that the question of her political future and her future in the public service still remains unresolved. I mean, there's an acting head of the SAPS. At the same time as you're now talking about criminal prosecution. Yes. So in a sense, things seem to be going in the opposite way to the way they're supposed to. You move from a situation where it took quite a lot of time for her to step down to a situation where you're now saying, well, you're going to prosecute her. But I mean, obviously, her response is fair enough. We are supposed to be a constitutional democracy where things are settled by law. And if this is settled in a court case, then, I think that shows that the Constitution is working.
Look, Prof, her view is that she's been used as a scapegoat for the entire Marikana massacre during a press conference. What do you think of that? And she feels she will be vindicated.
Well, you see, the interesting point here is how much of this is legal and how much of this is political. She could say, for example, and really this is speculating, I don't want to preempt the case, she could say, look, I said those things at those meetings because that's what I thought that the people I worked for wanted me to say. That's what I thought the politicians wanted me to say. I was just doing what they were told, and I've, as you correctly say, I've become the sort of victim on their behalf. The interesting thing to me is how much of this can really be settled in the courtroom and how much of this is settled politically, because you could even have a situation, for example, in which her or senior people are convicted and then people say, but actually you haven't gone after the people who were really the problem. So there is a political question there as well as a legal question.
Look, Professor, sticking with that, there's allegations that she made these allegations that her former staff is now being harassed. Do you think there's any truth in that? What do you think this means?
You see, these things are very relative. I mean, people who've been in positions of authority, they now start... Who knows? Maybe they have been harassed. Maybe she feels that them being asked questions that she finds uncomfortable is harassment. But I think the lesson for us, particularly on a show which is about media, is that the really important thing is that this should be settled in public. We don't want issues like these in which South Africans were shot to be settled in some back room somewhere. So the more it is settled in the courts, the more it is settled in public debate, the more we're able to see the evidence on both sides, and the more South Africans can make up their minds how they feel about this, the better for all of us.
Now, Prof, she is confident that she's confident that she'll get a fair trial. But why do you think then people are still urging on this matter?
Well, I think it was a major disaster in this country. I mean, 34 South Africans shot down by our own police force. I mean, obviously, people feel rightly that they want closure on this issue, and closure on this issue means that whoever was responsible needs to be held responsible. You see, I think the other problem, which, yes, the courts have an important role to play, but you can have criminal responsibility and you can also have political responsibility. So one of the criticisms some of us made of the Farlam report is that you look at the commissioner and some of the provincial commissioners and you look at their criminal responsibility or not, but you don't look at the political responsibility of the political leaders. The political leaders aren't guilty of a crime. You're not going to put them on trial, but they do have to account to the country for the way they behaved, even if it's only for not stopping it happening, because you're politically responsible for that as well. So I think that what we also need is a public debate about who's politically responsible.
All right, let's leave that matter there, Professor, and continue on now with another interesting story this week where the economic freedom fighters and the Democratic Alliance are pressing ahead with a constitutional court action to reaffirm the powers as well as functions of the public protector. Now, both parties have rejected President Zuma's proposal to pay back a portion of funds to reimburse the state for money spent on the security upgrades at his Nkandla private residence. Now, the EFF will lead a march to the Constitutional Court next week, Tuesday, a move seen as an attempt to mark President Zuma's administration and project it as a corrupt and incompetent move. Now, taking a swipe at the EFF without mentioning it by name, President Zuma maintained that the ANC's legitimacy will not be eroded by newly formed parties. Prof, look, I mean, what a week this has been. People have been calling for the president to pay back the money. He's now offered to pay back the money. Why the big raucous as to where the money is going to come from? He's going to pay back the money.
Well, the fight is not about whether he's going to pay back the money now. It's about what the process is and how it will work, etc., which is progress because it means that things are moving in a particular direction. But, of course, I think there's something very interesting about this. And that is that, there are all sorts of speculations about why he made the offer, etc. But surely we should go for the simplest explanation of all.
Which is?
Which is that there's a court case next week. And we have a legal system in this country. And if you have a court case and your lawyers tell you, rightly or wrongly, that's what lawyers are there for, your lawyers say, look, we think you're better off settling than going to court, then you offer a settlement. But what is interesting to me is that we continue here in public that, the only way to change things in this country is by disrupting things, etc. But this is the result of a court case. It's not the result of disrupting things. It's the result of using our constitution, using our legal system to hold our politicians to account, which really shows me that, once again, I said this in another context, we have institutions that work. We can argue whether they work for everybody, but certainly in this case, the institutions, the courts, are working for the country better than people who feel it's just about disrupting things.
Look, Professor, critics are saying that President Zuma's offer to pay back the money is due to the pressure. And of course, what do you think about that? Do you think it's the pressure?
Of course it's due to the pressure. That's how democratic systems work. There's no difference.
But was he not waiting for the legal system to vindicate him of the fact that he didn't ask for those upgrades at Nkandla?
Alicia, if you look around any country, we're not the only country in which a president is under pressure to do things that he doesn't want to do.
Yes.
And what happens in that situation is that because he doesn't want to do them, he digs in. And then there needs to be pressure if people want him to do things. And as a result of pressure, this idea of, why don't the politicians just do what we want them to do when we ask them to do it is very naive. It's not the way democracy works. The way democracy works is that you're given the tools to put that pressure on in a peaceful, legal way, if you want politicians to do things they don't want.
Look, I read something this week, Prof, that said his lawyer did maintain that this was not the president's first offer to pay back the money. This offer has been in the pipelines ever since the Nkandla debacle. But let's leave it there for now. But coming up next, we will be joined by EFF national spokesperson, Mr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, to set the record straight about the party leaders' utterances on journalists at ANN7 and the New Age. Are they barred from EFF events? Find out shortly after this break. This is Video Monitor.
SABC News, we report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. I'm very pleased to welcome EFF National Spokesperson, Mr. Mbuyiseni Ndlovu, and we're still retaining Professor Stephen Friedman, a highly respected political analyst, to discuss this matter. So, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
All right. Well, the banning of Gupta-owned media outlets from EFF events and what is seen as threats against its journalists caused quite a stir in the media fraternity this week. Let's take a look at this clip.
It's a battle, it's a war against Guptas. So we want to advise the Gupta television and newspapers, they must no longer come to the EFF events because they are not safe for them. Yes. We don't want to see ANN7 anywhere. We don't want to see New Age anywhere in our events. We're warning you, we do this peacefully. It's not tampering with media freedom. Those institutions are a product of corrupt activities in South Africa.
All right, now, Mbuyiseni, it's Sunday today. Different statements have been made throughout the week. As of now, are Gupta journalists allowed to EFF events?
No. We've made we're very consistent about that message. ANN7 and the New Age, in our view, do not constitute part of free media. They are not media, they are money-making, corrupt communications departments of the Gupta family. We separate between them and those who work for them, in this case, journalists. They don't speak for journalists. Journalists have their own associations, they've got their own unions, they are like workers. So for as long as journalists who work for those institutions come in the name of TNA and ANN7, they are not welcome in all EFF events. Mm-hmm. And that is in no way a war against journalists in their own right as journalists. If they move to ENCA or they come to SABC, they're fine. We are protesting ANN7 and TNA because in our view, those institutions are like what the Citizen, for an example, was, or NESPAS was, under apartheid. We've taken a moral and an ethical and a political position against their activities. We're antagonizing them. We're calling on the Guptas to completely disengage from all of South Africa's different sectors, business, politics, media, and to leave the country.
Look, Mbuyiseni, I need you to clarify this because I know also Mr. Malema uttered these utterances. He said that they are welcome to come in their personal capacity. But then now when we come to these events, we are representing a media house. So how are they going to gain access as individuals?
Well, I mean, most journalists don't only report for those that they work for. The space of ideas is much more. Yeah, some of them are freelancers. Some of them may come to in order to write in their own blogs, in order to launch a criticism in their own blogs, to engage us on the basis of their own, ideas. And I have to clarify this. We're not banning the TNA and NN7 on the basis of some critical story or views that they made about us or any other thing that we believe in. It's not because they publish the critical, it's not because of their views. It's because we believe that they are frontal organizations, money-making schemes that are engaged in corruption, in looting state resources, they're what literally NESPAS was under apartheid. And it's part of our program to get the Guptas to leave South Africa.
Professor, constitutionally, can a party outwardly ban certain media houses, specifically during election manifestos?
Well, I don't, you'd have to ask a constitutional lawyer that, Alicia, but I think that the democratic principle is that public organizations, and political parties are public organizations, don't get to decide who covers them in a democratic society. Just as the ANC ANC in January seemed to feel that it could decide which journalists covered its January the 8th statement. The EFF now seems to feel it can decide who covers its events. And I think we need to be concerned about that. If you don't like the Guptas or you don't like the organizations they run, there are things you can do as a democratic system to express that and to rally against it. But to say you can't cover the events, I think is a slippery slope, because next week it's going to be this one can't cover the events for some reason, and that one, and this week it's going to be the EFF, and next week it's going to be the ANC, and the week after it's going to be the DA. The people who lose out in this situation are the people of South Africa, because the people of South Africa are entitled to know what public organizations are doing. And if you start banning one or two, and you have very eloquent reasons for why you could do it, we're going to have this situation where the political parties are going to be sitting there deciding who covers them, and I don't think that's in our interest.
I want to hear your quick response on that.
Look, I think the professor enjoys that neutral position of not having to be conflicted by ethical questions, of having to change the world. That is the position he gets paid to do there in the university. He's not grappling in any way in changing the university.
Respond to any criticism without a personal insult.
No, that's not an insult. That is not an insult.
You just do personal insults.
That is not an insult.
That's all you guys do. You don't engage on the issues.
You called us fascist.
I didn't call you fascist.
Oh, you did. In many occasions, he called us fascist. We've never banned him from any event. It's not because they said something. It's not because of their critical stories. They can cover the EFF, but far. We have the freedom of association. These are our events. We have the freedom to choose who we dine with. Look, if we don't want you to come to our houses, even the universities,
not your house.
in as much as they are... No, those are our events. No, those are EFF events. They are not government events. Those are EFF events. EFF press conferences, EFF rallies, EFF gala dinners. We have the freedom of association. We can choose. We don't want to associate with Gupta corrupt families. That's the question. We're choosing to do something about the Guptas. Look, and in as far as we are concerned, the first step is to escalate a boycott that we've been having of those institutions into a complete not allowing them into our events. We're not saying they must not talk about us in their own television, and they can continue to do and speak in whatever way they want, but we do not want to associate it, we do not want to be in the same space with them as a first concrete step to engage and antagonize the Guptas. That's what we are doing. And that's a political position that we have taken, because we do not want any association with them, in our view, is a direct normalization of their activities in the country. And that has nothing to do with the journalists. When we go and say we're going to occupy ABSA, people never say, oh, but what about the workers? What about the journalists are workers, they are waged labor. When they come to the events, they are sent to report. They don't come out of the goodness of their hearts because they believe they must come. They are sent and paid to come and cover and report on behalf of their media houses. In our view, ANN7 and TNA are not media houses. In fact, that's a defense of media freedom. They are unfree.
Hear me out here, Mbuyiseni, because I have to make a very typical example. Peter Ndoro is employed by the SABC, and he also spearheads the TNA breakfast. But he's an SABC employee. Will he now not at a later stage be banned because he's got that association with TNA? No.
We're talking about journalists hired, people working for the TNA. We're antagonizing TNA, not the public broadcaster. We're going to be fighting now in Parliament against attempts to turn the public broadcaster into some state broadcaster by having Parliament not be part of the appointment of its board in Parliament. We're going to be fighting against those amendments that have been proposed by the Department of Communication. So there are many issues around NESPAs, there are many issues around all sorts of media, but in this case we are antagonizing the Gupta family, because in this case we don't think TNA, and there are facts, we've put those facts, about 80% of their budget being sustained by government, literally government, and there's been calls for investigation, there's been calls for both in Parliament, outside Parliament, and nothing has ever happened. There are no consequences in South Africa for those activities, yet it's clear from the sales, even their readership is not audited by ABC, but they get a huge budget. They are sustained literally through government ads. And we can't allow that. We're taking a position that this is not a newspaper. This is a money-making scheme. It's a corrupt activity. But that is not a threat to the workers. In fact, as we said those things, we are aware that in the process, those people might be caught in the crossfire. We want to clarify that our war is not against them. It's against the Guptas and the Gupta-owned masquerading media. Those are not media. It's like Zizi Kodwa coming to cover EFF events.
So if that's the case, could you explain what your commander-in-chief meant when he said he can't guarantee their safety? Most of us understand that to be a threat of violence against journalists.
No. I mean, it was in a context. Well, I'm trying to explain.
Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
Professor, let him answer.
In a process of a press conference, the CIC said a whole host of things in response to questions and so on and so forth. So when you play clips, you don't play the entire thing. Part of the things that the way the narrative went is that we love our journalists. In fact, some of them are even our members.
Yes, we've seen
that.
Yes.
But when you invite people, when we invite journalists, we take care of them. You would know. If you attended rallies of the EFF in the media side, we take care of them. We make sure that, in the big stadiums that they are ushered through and so on and so forth. We cannot guarantee those things for them because they are banned. They are not allowed, or rather, they are not allowed to come to EFF events. So we will always ask them to leave, as it were. That's all we meant.
Okay.
That is all we meant. But in the process of the crossfire, there'll be a whole host of protests that are launched against the media out there, not just media houses, every institution that the Guptas own. Because the objective is the Guptas must disengage from South Africa with immediate effect.
Look, Mboiseni, I have to ask you this now. Your comment on those people who view the banning as the undermining of the Constitution and freedom of speech principles in South Africa, set the record straight there.
No, they are not. I mean, we have done a balancing act. We don't think ANN7 and TNA are media, at least free media. They don't represent free media. They are money-making schemes, corrupt activities. That's the first one. The second one, we're not allowing their representatives in our events. It's not like everywhere we go, we're going to be looking for and then antagonizing. We're not allowing them in our events. And we are conscious that these are journalists who are engaged in a noble exercise of covering events.
The EFF's political campaign?
No. This is not media. In our view, it's not a loss. Everyone else is welcome to cover us, is welcome to come to any of our public events. Some of them private, some of them will meet them and give them, private interviews or selective interviews, not give them like in a public space so that they can write. This is a total disengagement with people we don't think that they are media. And for as long as you come in the name of TNA and ANN7, you won't be welcome. You are not welcome.
All right. Let's let the professor respond quickly, and then I've got one more question for Mboiseni.
With respect, there's a great deal of difference between saying you can't have the snacks or the T-shirts and saying we can't guarantee your safety. That is a threat of violence. And we... a democratic society. No, but you are threatening the person of those individuals, and then it's part of the problem in this country that we have senior politicians, of which Mr. Malema now seems to be one in this instance. If it's not King Goodwill making nasty comments about immigrants and then washing his hands when somebody assaults them, if somebody assaults a TNA or an ANN7 journalist at one of your meetings, you will wash your hands of it, but your leader would have been responsible for that.
Well, I mean, we can't guarantee the safety.
So
by
there
that
may be violence. So you're saying to your members it's okay to hit or attack an ANN7 or a TNA journalist. That's what you're saying on air.
No, that's not what we are saying, Professor. I've come to clarify that. I'm saying to you what we meant, but that's why we're going everywhere, talking to both journalists and explaining ourselves in shows like this, is to make sure that confusion is clarified. And I'm putting it on record. It is not about, he even said peacefully. And I think you must appreciate here that maybe what we're not, the wall between you and I is created by language. The way in which language works with us might be different to you. And we've come to clarify because we've understood that there's that misconception. That's why we're here. And the clarification is that is not a call for any physical assault of anybody that works for those institutions. We've clarified that. But they must not come to our events. And if they come, they will be turned away.
Right.
That is what it meant.
So there won't be fought against. There won't be people yielding pangas against them, but they will be turned away.
I mean, you know, in political rhetoric, there is a whole lot of figures of speech. There was a long misunderstanding for the longest of time.
But
that
what if your
a statement
members
like
misinterpret
a statement
that
like
order?
no, but that's why we are everywhere. Even in the press conference, I'm saying to you, statements like we love them, statements like it's peaceful, they were made.
Look.
But people chose, and I'm saying that that particular statement was in relation to expressing that we are conscious that these people will be caught in the crossfire.
All right.
You get what I mean? They are not allowed for as long as they come in the name of TNA and NN7. We've got the freedom of association, and our rights of admission are reserved.
Look,
Will you take, Alicia, will
very
you take
quickly,
disciplinary action against any EFF member who physically threatens a journalist?
Well, I mean, that's what happens. We condemn it all the time in all the events. I mean, I personally go. There was a time when we were fighting with the SABC and it was confused on the ground to be thinking, no, we must chase them away from all our events. We would personally go and say, no, that is not the position. That's why we're here, clarifying both to you and to the public that that's not what it means. What it meant is they are not allowed to come. The rights of admission
is reserved.
All
right,
gentlemen,
come on now. I just want to quickly wrap up this issue. Mboyiseni, you have to answer this. Muhsin of NN7 has, of course, indicated that he will be taking the EFF to court over those utterances. Your response there? What are you going to do?
Well, look, I mean, we're not scared of
Have you explained to him what you've just explained to us?
We've received that open letter, and a response has been prepared to them. I'm sure that we'll share it with the public.
Okay.
We maintain our position. He doesn't speak on behalf of journalists. He doesn't speak on behalf of workers. He's a boss. We know where to find workers and speak to them. We will talk to workers. We will explain as we are explaining here to the public. We don't have to explain to him. We don't have to speak to him in order to speak to the workers. He doesn't speak. He thinks he speaks on behalf of the workers. He doesn't. There is a distinction in South Africa for as long as there's wage labor between those who own and those who work for those who own. So we'll go to explain to associations, free associations of journalists, what we meant, not to Atul Gupta. In fact, a message to him that must be articulated is their time in South Africa is over. They must pack their bags and go wherever they came from. They are not welcome anymore.
All right. Well, that's where we leave it. Prof, you can stay right there. Mboyiseni, thank you so much for coming in and clarifying that issue. We'd like to now thank the EFF National Spokesperson, Mr. Mboyiseni Ndlozi. And of course, we're still going to keep Professor Friedman right here. And those were their contributions and views on this matter. There you have it. And you heard it first right here on Media Monitor. More stories after this break.
Makamelo Sekgonze, one strong woman who said no to hunger. She never allowed circumstances to pull her down. At daybreak, she is up and running in the streets of Johannesburg to make her living. After 12 hours of hard work, she goes back home being able to put food on the table. Join me, Bulemo Lebatsi, on your show about those who take on and conquer life challenges every Saturday at 5:30.
Your World makes it its business every evening to round up the leading local stories and international news to keep you informed all the time.
Make a date with Your World every evening for all the news headlines around the world to keep you abreast with knowledge.
Catch Your World for headlines across the world every Monday to Friday from 9 p.m, then Saturday and Sunday from 7 p.m.
Africa's tech scene is constantly coming up with innovative ways to answer some of the continent's problems.
We source content from social media, from our mobile apps, from our website.
And as people move from phone calls to data, companies have to switch what they offer.
People expect to get higher speeds, better quality broadband for less.
On Network, we have information on Africa's technology and social media scene. That's Network with me, Phumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 9 p.m. Central African Time, only on SABC News.
All right, you're watching Media Monitor. Welcome back. You can still share your views on Twitter on our discussions today. I'm now joined by Ms. Sophie Mokoena, who is our SABC foreign editor. Moving on to other stories of the continent now. Delegates attending the 36th AU Summit say the conference and the facility and the services, as well as issues raised on this year's summit, were successful and decisive for the future of the continent. The summit was focusing on issues of human rights, with a particular focus on women, which urges all citizens on the continent to take part in the development of the continent, regardless of any form of discrimination. The conflict in Burundi also took center stage. Sophie, you were at the AU Summit. What stood out for you there?
Well, the discussions around the Peace and Security Council, where they talked about areas where there are still conflicts and what needs to be done. For example, Burundi, a decision was taken not to send the force to Burundi, as it was indicated earlier. You remember in December last year, there was an indication that 5,000 troops will be sent to Burundi. Yes. Leaders or heads of state saying, no, we are not sending the troop, but rather will send a delegation to go and speak to President Nkurunziza and stakeholders on the ground to find a solution. And yesterday we got information that the current chair, which is Niger, has taken a decision to appoint a team that will go there, team of heads of states, and President Jacob Zuma is part of the delegation.
Look, Sophie, the issue of Lesotho there, we know that SADC had temporarily withdrawn from Lesotho. What was the final outcome of that?
Well, Lesotho wasn't much on the table because it's still a matter before SADC. And you'd recall that SADC didn't withdraw, but it was intending to do so if Lesotho didn't cooperate. But you'd recall that the Prime Minister, Ndade Pakadi Thamsisidi, remained behind after the SADC meeting, and he spoke to the chair, Ndade, President Khama, and the issue was discussed and agreement was reached. We are expecting on Monday the government to present a report of the commission in parliament and later, of course, engage with stakeholders. I'm definitely sure Takwana Ngatane, our correspondent in Lesotho, will be in parliament tomorrow morning, looking forward to hear what's likely to happen or to see what's likely to happen in parliament in Lesotho in terms of that commission.
All right, so if you take us through some of other resolutions that were taken at the summit.
The other important resolution was to speed up the integration, but it starts with regions. All regions must integrate, and therefore you're looking at the continental integration to ensure that there's a better economic activity in the continent. Issue of infrastructure, the committee that's being chaired by President Zuma continue to say we mean business and will continue to ensure that there is proper infrastructure in the continent, be it road, rail, and be it communication. And the other issue is the issue of South Sudan. You know very well that the tensions in South Sudan, the internal conflict where the ruling party experienced divisions, and therefore the issues were discussed. But unfortunately, the president of South Sudan was not there because he was back in Sudan waiting for the man who was the vice president, Dr. Machar, to come so that they can finalize the implementation of the peace process. You are aware that they have appointed members of parliament, both sides, the ministers. Now what is left is for President Salva Kiir to appoint him as the vice president. But he is saying that he is not going back because there are outstanding issues.
Very interesting indeed. You must have enjoyed it, Sophie, but thank you so much for your time. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. That was SABC foreign editor, Ms. Sophie Mokwen, and I hope that you're ready to start your day fully informed. Let me thank all our guests for making time to be with us this morning. Remember, Media Monitor aims to shed light and not take sides. So the views expressed here were those of our panelists and not the SABC's. Do catch us on YouTube on the SABC News digital platform. And if you missed the show, you can catch it live on YouTube. I'm Alicia Jali. This is Media Monitor on the SABC News channel. Have a great Sunday.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Vera's life as a little girl was filled with joy and hope. Before her parents passed away, Vera was optimistic about her dreams of being an artist.
I had a very happy childhood. My parents were amazing. My dad was a retired police officer, and my mom was a school teacher. So you have two disciplined people in my house, and I'm not even ready to be disciplined by them, but still they try hard. I was very stubborn, but I got the best of love from them both.
Nigerian-born and bred, Nkechi Aninowi, now going by a stage name of Vera Ephraim, was chased out of her brother's home after he did not believe in her career path.
I was going to, as a young person, to dance companies, learning dance and doing acting as my part-time while I was waiting to get into university. And he didn't like that for his selfish reasons. And I was adamant about it. I was stubborn about it. I was trying to make him see, which he didn't want to make me see.
Now Vera only had her dance crew members to fall back on, as the Nigerian perception only fixed the arts with negativity.
Well, the perception, first of all, is that it's for loafers. It's for people who are not serious. It's for people who, being a prostitute or just smoking weed or not serious about it. The basic jobs where like you're going to be a doctor or engineer or lawyer, those kind of things.
Now Vera had to take charge of her life and show not only her family, but the society surrounding her that there is positivity.
My breakthrough came when I was chosen in a dance company to tour with them to Europe. That was my first breakthrough to say all of this are paid up, beginning to pay off eventually. Because those times too, I was doing a lot of work that I wasn't paid in terms of money. It was, as I said, it was passion, but I just believed that I'm gonna keep pushing. And even though I had these challenges, I just couldn't see it as a challenge. I just thought it's norm.
Fueled by her passion, Vera went to the United Kingdom's Salford University to study further.
I was also looking into going to study in the UK, which financially I was going to have to finance myself. So one of the theatres that I work with, the theatre in Nigeria and Lagos, we traveled to England to do productions and come back. And once we went to Manchester, and then I thought, one of the directors mentioned this studio is pretty cool for studying, and I thought, I'm pretty connected to it. So I started, while we were there, in my free time, I was strolling to universities and colleges and schools and see what diploma I could come back to do. I have always had my eye on South Africa. I really loved the art. I loved the music, you know, because through media and television you could see, you know, you could see what's been projected in terms of art.
Since then, the starlet has made peace with them to let go of the anger she had against her family back in Nigeria.
Anger blocks you from achieving what you're supposed to achieve. Anger blocks you from, you become a slave to anger. So I would say I'm not angry. I don't hate them. I don't resent any of them anymore.
Now Vera prides herself with her Western dancing classes, her credible acting profile, and choreographing for 2015's Africa Day. She continues to follow her passion that gives her happiness.
I'm now doing things for myself. I'm looking forward to the future, more and more into the future. I'm not doing it to prove to anybody anything anymore. I'm happy.
Looking for social issues?
It is not our intention to give condoms to 10-year-old children.
We are here to assist you. Looking for religious issues?
The point is not for the church to try and prove whether this is the fact.
So we want accountability. Is there a system of governance in your churches?
Political issues.
Barack Obama said Africa should stop looking to the outside for salvation and focus on someone else being at fault for the problems of the continent.
Economic issues.
The young mothers, single mothers that's buying property now.
Or just looking to air your views.
Here are some of your views on social media.
Look no further, as Newsroom has all the informative information you need. Weekdays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News channel.
Technology isn't all scary. There's also fun stuff like gaming.
Lots of women do play games, whether it's on their phones or their tablets.
Then there are Africans who are using new tools to make other people's lives much easier.
We typed the whole CV on a small, QWERTY Nokia phone.
For all these and other technology and social media news, join me, Siphumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC News.